Haumitakuyepi. Long time ago, in the beginning, as the earth was brand new, all the land was in one giant continent. And in time, various animals started to come on the earth, and various plants started to grow on the earth. And a little bit later, humans came on the earth. They arrived in 5 different locations at different time periods. And as they were living on the earth, their languages started to develop based on the land where they lived. So the nature in the area where they lived really influenced the development of their culture, their spirituality, and their language. Now, in the beginning, the people learned that the self has 4 parts: the mind, the emotional part, the soul, and the physical body. And that all 4 parts are connected to each other. And if one part goes down or becomes sick or ill or diseased or neglected, then eventually the other 3 become infected as well. They get sick too. Another thing is that sometimes people focus on only one part of themselves, and in the meantime they neglect the other parts of their self. And the person lives a life of illness, of addiction. And the people learned that difficulty is a part of life, it's a part of living, and that it is healthy when we learn from difficulty, that we learn as much as we can from it, and that brings us knowledge and wisdom. These are blessings, and this helps us to appreciate our blessings in life even more than before. So this way of living is really a natural way. It's based on nature. As time continued on, these groups of humans started to wander around the earth and find new places to live as their population was steadily increasing. And some of these groups met the other human groups, and they came together, had children, and human society was continuing to develop. Wherever a group of humans decided to settle, their bodies started to adapt to the area as well. For example, those who settled in areas that were further away from the sun, their skin lightened, their hair was affected, and their eyes were affected by this change too. So in that area, the people who live there generally have the same skin tone, hair color, and eye color, and so forth. And the same thing happened for people who settled in areas that were closest to the sun. They became darker. Their hair also adapted to the area. For example, if it was in a desert, their hair adapted accordingly. Their eyes adapted accordingly. So after many, many years, we have the different races of people. But inside of the human peoples, it's the same. Everybody has a body, a physical body. Everybody has a soul. Everybody has an emotional part. And everybody has a mind. And we all bleed red. And no matter where you go on this earth, and you come into the presence of babies, they speak the same language. This is showing you that within us, we are the same. It's our outer identity that might be a little bit different from others, but inside of us, we are all the grandchildren of our grandmother Earth. So, the people began to develop technology, and the more technology they developed, it was at the expense of nature, at the expense of the earth. And the Lakota Star Knowledge stories talk about this time period as when people could travel great distances in a very short amount of time. The stories say that they could travel through the earth. They could travel through the air. They could travel through the water at great distances and at really, really fast speeds. This is telling you that there was a technology that existed in the beginning. And like I said, this was developed by humans, but the more they developed this technology, it violated the earth. It violated nature. And things started to go out of balance. But in the beginning, the humans really paid attention to nature. They really paid attention to the earth. They watched things. They were able to live with nature. But as they developed this technology, they slowly started going away from nature, and they started going away from themselves as well. But at the peak of this period of technology, there were still some people from all nations who still were in touch with the earth. And they still lived with nature. They still observed what was going on in the nature. They felt that they were a part of nature. Whereas those that were developing these technologies, they soon began to feel they were above the earth, that they could control the earth, and that they could control each other. They started messing with things to affect the weather. They started messing with things to affect the ground. They started to come up with ideologies to control whatever it could not understand or whatever it considered weak. Then some humans started to think that the more knowledge they had, the more that they knew, that they were better than those who did not have their knowledge. So they started to separate themselves into a us against them way of thinking. And they started to develop ideas like their way is the best way, and that if you just do things the way they want you to do it, that everything will be good for you and the world. This is called paternalism, because they're acting like their fathers and the other cultures are children. So that's why they call this paternalism. And they also would say that their skin color was the best skin color, and their race is the best race, and everybody else is not good enough. And that is racism. And then they would start looking at other cultures and start judging those cultures by their own culture standards and rules. This is called ethnocentrism. And along with this is the idea that this group thinks that its way is the only way, that anything else is not good. That's dogma. See how these things develop from separating yourself from other people and saying, you guys are not like us, so you're bad. You guys have different skin colors, so stay over there. Or something like that. Your culture is really crazy, so you're calling him bad. He's evil and must be destroyed. I really like that line from Steel Magnolias. For those of you that know that movie, it's one of my favorite lines. You are evil and must be destroyed. That's dualism. It always looks at everything in two groups. And that is why this way of thinking is called dualism. The word dualism comes from the Latin word duo, which means two. This is a really unhealthy way of thinking. When you are thinking like that, you're going away from yourself. You're not really taking care of the four parts of yourself. And this thinking goes hand in hand with the development of technologies. And in the beginning, some of these people might say, well, we're doing this to make the world a better place, or we're manipulating the earth so more food will grow, or something like that. They try to make their activities look really good. So, like, if you join them, it would be good for you and good for the world. You see what it's doing? It's unhealthy. And the stronger that a person goes into duality, the further that person goes away from themselves. That connection that binds their emotional part, their spiritual part, their mental part, and their physical body becomes weak. And they only look at the outside identity. They only look at what they can see. They think that if I see it, it's real. If I don't see it, it's not real. It doesn't exist. So, this way of thinking, this dualistic way of thinking, it takes people away from themselves. It disconnects them from nature. As I said earlier, we have four parts of the self: the physical body, the mind, the emotional part, and the soul. Where these four parts connect is inside of you, and this is called the sacred center. When you do the best that you can to take care of these four parts, then you are building peace and love and intimacy inside of you. And this is the way that you learn to love yourself. And there is a soul piece from the earth that is inside of you. So when you live this way, taking care of the four parts of yourself as best as you can, it puts you in contact with that earth soul piece that is inside of you. And this is how you communicate with the earth. Because when you're living this way, again, taking care of your four parts of yourself, when you are living this way, you are also really developing a special connection to nature and the earth. The more you live this way, the more you nurture this connection. And you start to see things that you didn't see before in nature, everywhere around you. And you realize it's even more beautiful than you think. And it's wonderful. It's amazing. So as the people were becoming more advanced in their technologies, at the expense of violating nature and polluting the water, the earth, the air, abusing fire, most people were selfish. And only a handful of people were still living in balance with nature. And as I explained, when you take care of the four parts of yourself, you are able to come in contact with that earth soul piece that is inside of you. And so these people that were living in balance with nature, they knew something was going to happen. They could sense it. And then they heard the voice of the earth telling them where to go for safety, because she was going to cleanse herself. She was going to shake her back. That's what the story says. She's going to shake her back. She's going to literally shift. The story says that this is what happened. These selfish humans, these humans who had this high technology and were using it to control everything, or tried to control everything, they were so far away from themselves that they didn't hear the voice. The voice went to everybody, but most humans didn't hear it because they're too selfish. They did not take care of themselves. They didn't hear the voice. And there were some people who were trying to warn everybody, you need to get to safety, come with us. But the others would say, nah, you're crazy. See, there were humans that were pleading with others to come with them for safety, but the others didn't want to go because they didn't believe it. So, those humans that were selfish, that thought they could control everything, they perished. And that was most humans in every nation, including where Lakota people come from too. Most Lakota people were destroyed during that cleansing. Most native people were destroyed because they were selfish too. That's what the story says. But there were a handful from all nations that were still in touch with the earth. They were still living in a way that they were connected to the earth, and that includes all skin colors. There's not just 4. A lot of people think that the medicine wheel represents the 4 races of people. No, it does not. Those 4 colors represent the directions, the grandfathers who made those directions. They are not skin colors. The only red people I've ever seen are people who are sunburned. If you're an Indian person, look at yourself. Are you red? No, you're not. You're some shade of brown. So red does not represent Indians. Red represents life because it's the color of blood. And we all bleed red. And many plants and animals also bleed red. This is the truth. It's a sacred color. It represents life. Red does not represent Indians. So when you hear the expression Shankuluta, the red road, this does not mean the Indian way. Absolutely not. It means the road of life. And anybody can walk that road. Any animal, any plant can grow on that road. It's not just for Indians. So when you hear people say that the red road is the Indian way, that's a racist thing to say. It has nothing to do with Indians. It has everything to do with life. All Wamakashka. Wamakashka is everything in its natural state. Trees, plants, flowers, animals, microorganisms, the water, clouds, everything in its natural state. That's all Wamakashka, and we are all in the circle together. That's the red road. That's the ancient way. But these people who developed these technologies and then used it in selfish ways, their way is that man is above everything, even above women. So look at it. They tried to control women as well. They said that women were subservient to men. But there were some societies that were the other way around too. There were societies that were extremely matriarchal, where the women were above the men. Well, that does not work either. When the man is the top of this pyramid, that's called patriarchy. When it's the woman that's at the top, it's called matriarchy. Neither way works. It's like 2 people in the canoe and they're rowing in opposite directions. They don't get anywhere. They just goes in circles. And nothing but anger happens and frustration. That's not life. That's creating difficulty when you don't really need to do that. It's like punishing yourself. The ancient way is not matriarchal and it's not patriarchal either. And so those who heard the voice, they went to the safe places. Some went in mountains, some went in caves, some went in boats. Wherever they lived, the earth told them where to go. And so a small group of people from every nation was able to hear that voice and hear the instructions of where to go for safety. And after they got to their safe places, then the cleansing began. The sun, the winds, and the moon, the thunder being, Wakina, also helped. They were all involved in helping the earth cleanse herself. The story says that the earth shook her back. That means she literally moved, so that what used to be east and west is now today north and south. And during that cleansing process, most humans were destroyed. And this includes native people. Most native people were also destroyed. As I said earlier, most people in every nation had become selfish, and they believed that they were above the earth. They believed that they could control everything, developing technology, and as a result, this development included poisoning the air, poisoning the water, poisoning the ground, and abusing fire. So this process lasted quite a while. It wasn't just like 1 hour later everything is changed. It took a long time to happen, but it did happen. And after the cleansing was over, the people came out of their places of sanctuary. The people who survived it, remember, these are the people who still were living in balance with nature. They were taking care of the 4 parts of themselves. So these people included people from all nations. There were just a little bit from every nation that managed to survive. Again, they survived because they lived in balance with nature, and this allowed them to hear the voice of the earth telling them where to go for safety. And I want to stress this one more time, that to live this way requires that you do your best in taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. These 4 areas are the 4 parts of yourself. And when you do this as best as you can, you are able to come in contact with your sacred center. The sacred center is the area where these 4 parts connect, where your body, your mind, your heart, and soul connect. When I say heart, I mean your emotional self. And in that center is the soul piece that is from the earth. And this is the area where you are able to establish a direct communication with the earth. So after the cleansing, the people came out and they noticed that everything is different. As I said, the mountains that used to run east and west were now running north and south. Everything was changed. Everything was new. Everything was starting over again. Now the animal nations, they began to search for their relatives and they couldn't find them. They ran all over the place. The birds were flying all over the place. They couldn't find their relatives. And it was the eagles who fly the highest that noticed this giant continent no longer existed. And that now the world is made up of many continents, the way it looks today. And so they realized that everything was split apart, and that this was all caused by the humans. So the animals began to be upset about this, that because of the human selfishness, everything was changed. And the animal families were torn apart, and they were very angry because it was the humans who did this. So there was meetings that were going around among the 4-legged nations, and they were talking about destroying the humans so that this would not happen again. And this word went around, and a lot of animals joined the 4-leggeds in this goal. Well, in one of these meetings, there was a little magpie, and this magpie was standing at the edge of this large group of four-leggeds, and he was listening to all the rhetoric that was being spoken. And then he flew back to a large bird gathering, and he told them what the four-leggeds were talking about. And a lot of the birds, they also wanted to join and destroy the humans too, because they were missing relatives. The relatives they were missing were on other continents. I will call them the winged nations, because it's not only birds, but any animal or creature that has wings. They're a part of the winged nations. In the Lakota way, many times things are categorized into 4 or 7 groups. And creation is also categorized this way. The 4 groups in Lakota are Hunum, the 2-leggeds, and Hutopa, the 4-leggeds. Another group is called Hupahu. These are the winged nations, anything that flies. And the 4th group is called Takushkan. This is that which moves and grows. This is plants. This is all the others that are not classified or that are not categorized in the other 3 groups. They are in this 4th group called Takushkan. Well, the 2-leggeds. This is comprised of humans and somebody else. I will explain to you who that somebody else is in a few minutes. But let's go back to the story. This magpie just came back from a meeting of 4-legged animals, and they were talking about destroying the humans because it was human selfishness that everything had changed in the world and the animals could not find their relatives and everything was different. And so when the magpie told the winged people about this, they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to join the 4-leggeds and say, hey, let's destroy all the humans so that this will never happen again. Well, as they were all hollering around and shouting, yeah, we gotta destroy those no good human people. If it wasn't for them and their selfishness and so-called technology, the earth would still be as it was before. But now everything is different. Everything is changed. And the animals are not liking it. So the winged nations, which includes the birds, were just about ready to join the 4-leggeds in their campaign to destroy all humans. But an owl spoke up. And he said, wait a minute. You know that if we destroy the humans, since they belong to the Hunum group, the 2-leggeds, that means we have to destroy all 2-leggeds. And it's not just humans that are 2-leggeds, it's the bears. They are 2-legged as well. And bears represent wisdom. There's another story where we have a giant bear who walks on its hind legs, and his name is Hunum. And he's a member of the Wakantanka. So, if they destroy all humans and all bears, that's also an attack against the Wakantanka, because there's a bear in the Wakantanka. So the winged nations, they started to think, oh yeah. And the owl reminded them that bears represent wisdom. If we destroy wisdom, how can there be peace? And so the winged nations were starting to think, yeah, the owl is right. We have to stop the 4-leggeds. So the winged nations went to the 4-legged nations, and they tried to explain to them that it would not be a good idea to destroy the humans for the reasons that the owl had mentioned. But the four-leggeds were very stubborn. They wanted to continue with their campaign to destroy all humans. And if it meant destroying the bears, well, they were ready to destroy the bears too. So the owl said, wait a minute, I have an idea. Why don't we race around the heart of the earth? We race around it. We'll begin at the east side and we'll race around the heart of the earth 4 times in a clockwise way. And whoever wins decides the fate of the two-leggeds. So the four-legged nations thought about it and they finally agreed to have this race. So the winged nations were going to race for the two-leggeds so that the two-leggeds would live. So they all gathered at the east side of this area known as the heart of the earth. This is known today as the Black Hills in South Dakota. So they all assembled at the east side of the Black Hills. And there were many animals that were in this race. They were all lined up and they all wanted to win. The four-leggeds really wanted to win because they wanted to destroy all two-leggeds, especially the humans. And the winged people, they were really ready too because they wanted to save the two-leggeds. And then this little magpie showed up. And everybody started laughing because he's just a little bird, and magpies, they really like to talk. They just yakety yak, yak, yak. Yeah. they talk a lot. And they're kind of annoying. And so when they saw this little magpie show up and get on the starting line, all the other animals were laughing. The mountain lions, the deer, the elk, the moose, and all these really fierce animals. They were really strong and fast. And here's this little tiny magpie showing up and everybody's laughing at him. Who the heck does this guy think he is anyway? He's really standing at the start line ready to run. Yeah. So they started the race and boy, they took off. Man, there was a bunch of animals running. Just dust in the air. They were running around the Black Hills. I'll say the Black Hills because this way you can visualize it a little bit better. They started running, starting on the east side, and they were running around the Black Hills. It's quite a distance, yeah. It's really a big area. And they came around the first time. And when they were coming around the first time, completing the first lap, they would really kick in, yeah? Really dig in deep and try to run even faster. And when they did that, a lot of dirt would pile up on this east side, on the curve. A lot of dirt would just start to pile up there. And then they would continue the race. And they were running really hard and fast. And now they're on the second lap, and some of the animals, they're starting to become too tired. They don't even want to take a pause to drink water or anything. They want to run and run and run to win this race. They didn't bother to eat anything or drink anything, and as a result, some of the animals started to drop dead. They were dying from exhaustion. It was too much for their hearts and lungs. But again, here they come around this last curve. They're finishing the second lap, and whoever's left, they're still digging in really hard, and more dirt keeps piling up on that east side at the starting point. And then they run, and they're running hard as they can. And next thing you know, some of these animals, their hooves are splitting open, and blood is coming out. And it's getting into the ground. There's so many animals on this race. And they're starting to make a track because they're all digging in deep into the earth to move as quick as possible. And as they're doing that, their blood from their split hoofs is going into the ground. And the ground is starting to develop a red color. And they keep running. Even though their hoofs are split open, they keep running. They come around the third time, and again they dig in. Even with their hooves split open, they dig in deep into the earth, and more earth gets piled up on the east side of that final curve as they finish the third lap. And then they run as hard as they can. As tired as they still are trying to run as hard as they can. But still, more animals are starting to fall by the wayside. They're dying. And they're slowly making their way around the fourth time. And as they come around that final curve, there's only 2 animals left. There's a buffalo and that little magpie that everybody was laughing at the beginning of the race. It was just those 2. The buffalo turned around and said, "What the heck is this guy? What? Huh?" This little magpie is really running, yeah? These little legs, he's really running behind the buffalo. And the buffalo is like, "Shit, this tiny guy, this crazy." So then he started to run faster. The magpie thought to himself, "Hey, wait a minute. Why don't I just fly up and land on his hump and just sit up there?" So when the buffalo turned around, he noticed that, where'd he go? So he thought, he must have fell to the wayside too. So he said, "Yep, I'm the only one." So he decided to slow down, and he just trotted. And he was trotting his way to the finish line. So he said, "Yep, this is an easy win for me." And just before he got to the finish line, that magpie flew over, won the race. And so this little magpie saved the humans and the bears from being destroyed. The rest of the animals that were not in the race, they all had a meeting. And the four-leggeds decided, okay, we will keep our word concerning this race. We will not destroy the humans. But if they do this again, if they become selfish again and disrupt the balance of nature and poison the air and the water and the earth and abuse the fire, if they do this again, this time we are going to destroy them. And the winged nation said, if the humans do this again, we will lead the attack. We will lead first. And so that was the agreement. And the agreement included that humans were supposed to take care of nature. They're supposed to take care of everything. To manage the forests, to manage the water, to manage the air, to use the fire in a healthy way. That was the agreement. Remember this area where the animals would really run hard and they would really dig into the earth. And I said that a lot of dirt was being piled up because of that. When the animals would come around that last curve and they would really dig hard and a lot of dirt would go to the side. This pile of dirt was really high when the race was over. And it looked like the shape of a bear resting. And so they called it Matropaha, Bear Butte. This is a reminder for the humans that they are to take care of everything, that they are to manage the earth, that they are to care for nature, to manage things so that things don't overgrow or undergrow or overpopulate or underpopulate, that humans are the caretakers of nature. And if humans stop doing that, then the agreement is over. And remember what the winged nation said. They said that they will lead the attack against the humans. And another reminder concerning this race is the actual racetrack itself. When you look at the Black Hills from above, you can see there is a track that goes around the Black Hills. You see something going around it. And it looks kind of pinkish. And when you go there to this actual location of the track, you see that, yeah, it is pink. It used to be red. This is coming from the blood of the animals whose hooves broke open as they were running on the track. In the story, I was talking about how even while they were bleeding from their hooves being broken open, they were still running, and blood was going into the earth as they were running. You can still see this today. There are photos taken from above in which you can see this. It's really interesting. If you look at the screen, you can see a photo there right now, and you can see the racetrack. This is really interesting. This is a reminder of how powerful the animals are. Also, this racetrack, like Bear Butte, is a reminder of the humans' responsibilities in caring for nature, for the animals, for the plants, for the water, for the air, for the earth, for ourselves, and for each other. And that all begins within us. When we live our lives in a healthy way, we are being responsible for ourselves, because reality begins within. And as I said earlier concerning the second star knowledge principle, in like attracts like, if we are living in a healthy way, we naturally attract that which is similar. And we influence, through our communication, healthy living to others. That's what these things remind us of, that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to many things. Before we can truly fulfill our responsibility in taking care of the earth, we have to take care of ourselves first, because reality begins within. It always comes back to that. Reality begins within. Now, when you think about it, there are many times in history where diseases have gone throughout the earth and have killed many, many people. And a lot of times they come from the winged nations. For those of you who remember, several years ago there was something called the Asian bird flu. And now look at what's happening today. As I'm making this recording, today's date is the 22nd of April in the year 2022. Look at what we're still in today. Where did this come from? This coronavirus. One really strong theory is that it came from bats. Which group of Wamakashka do bats come from? Chupahu, the winged nations. Makes you think, doesn't it? And then what's coming next? The things that are happening today, they really seem to fit this story. This story is telling us that what we're seeing today, that this happened before. And the result was a cleansing. And look at the weather now. Look at what's happening. There are terms I've never heard of before. Cyclone bomb. Super tornado. My goodness. I never heard those kind of terms when I was growing up. The winter storms are showing up in places where there never was winter storms before. Or it's the first time in their recorded history that they had a winter storm. In some places it's tornadoes. They're happening in places that they never got that before. It's something to think about. This story is trying to teach us something. Are we going to listen this time? That's up to you. This is a story that has existed for a very, very long time. It says a lot of things. Imagine that. It talks about a time when all the land was one. This is scientifically proven. They called it Pangea, that there was a time when all the earth was one giant continent. This story is saying the same thing. And it talks about when people came on the earth. It talks about a technology that existed that is far greater than what we're seeing today. Now, there's some very interesting pictures that you can find on the internet that are of things that are under the water, and they resemble machines. And a lot of anthropologists do not want people to see these things because nobody knows who built them. They don't look like anything that exists today. In some of these stories, they even suggest things that today would look like DNA manipulation. The people really were playing with nature in a not good way, in a not healthy way. This stuff is in stories from long time ago. This all happened before, and more happened before that we haven't seen yet, that we probably will see. This is an interesting cycle, isn't it? But this story is also telling us that there is a way to survive this. There is a way to live with this. Because we're here. We are descendants of those individuals in that story that were still living in balance with nature. They heard the earth's voice telling them where to go for safety. We are descendants of those people. And we have a choice here. Are we going to follow the ancestors who survived and be like them? Or are we going to be like the others who became dualistic, who thought they had control over nature? Those people who, because they were more concerned about materialism, more concerned about their outer identity, that they lost connection with their own selves. Are we going to be like them? Because that story tells you what happened to them. Do we want to go on that road? Or do we want to go on the road of the ancestors who survived? We have an opportunity in front of us. It all begins within you. Lakota Star Knowledge, first concept, reality begins within. When you take care of the 4 parts of yourself, you establish peace within yourself and intimacy. Then the next star knowledge concept comes in. Like attracts like. It doesn't mean somebody exactly like you. It just means you will attract people who are on the same emotionally healthy level as you are. Because like attracts like. That's a natural law. We are not designed to be alone. We are designed to communicate. We have arms to move, legs to walk. That's communication. We can sit down, stand up, lay down, roll over, do somersaults. That's all communication. We can dance. It's communication. We can talk to each other. We can sing with each other. Even if it's not the same language, it's still a way to communicate with each other. We have mouths to do these things, to talk, to sing. Arms to hold each other, shake each other's hands, congratulate each other, support one another, to carry one another when one feels they need a little help. And they do too for us when we are feeling a little bit low. We are designed to communicate with each other. How are we going to do that? In a healthy way or in an unhealthy way? That's up to you. It's something to think about. These ancestors who survived, they chose to do it in a healthy way. That's how they survived. That's the reason why we are here today. What are we going to do for those who are coming, our descendants? Are we going to be like the ancestors who survived so we can have descendants? Or are we going to be like the others who didn't survive because they were selfish, thought they needed nobody? They have no descendants. This earth is a very beautiful place. In Lakota Star knowledge, when the earth was first created, she was very young. Of course, yeah, she was new, like a little child, and was very difficult. But she grew to be a mother, a good mother, nurturing everybody, feeding everybody. And now she's a grandmother. She's here for you. Anytime you're not feeling too good, talk to her. Or even when you are feeling good, talk to her. We should all talk to our grandmother Earth at least once a day. Even if it's to say, thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Because remember, she gave a piece of her soul to every one of you. And not just people, but to animals and to plants. Everything has a piece of her soul in it. This is how we are connected to her. And we can have a direct communication to her if we only take care of ourselves. Take care of ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So we influence peace in our communication. We influence peace within ourselves. This is how we learn to honor ourselves. And by doing so, we honor the earth and we honor each other. And we love ourselves and love the earth and love one another. Tikichi shilapo. This is how we do that. It's all up to each one of us. Difficulties are a part of life, as I said earlier, but we can get through it. Natural law says we can, no matter what it is. We come to peace with it by learning from it and making the best out of the situation, even when there doesn't look like a solution, as long as we learn from it and do our part in making the best out of it that we can. That's healing. And that's going to bring you wisdom and knowledge so that you will learn to appreciate what is really important in your life. And doing this nurtures that connection to that piece of the earth that's inside of you, that's inside of everything in nature. So life is about learning so that we can live, so that we can love. And this story teaches that too. It shows that. We all play a role in this. Every one of us is important. Every one of you is important. You are a blessing. The fact that you are here and you're listening to this, you are a blessing. Tell that to the people around you. Hey, you are a blessing. No matter what situation they are in, it's going to get better. And have hope. Just like the ancestors who survived that first cleansing, they had hope and they made it. And thanks to them, we're here. Now, we have that choice to be like them. Or not. It's your choice. You always have a choice. No matter what, you always have a choice. The things are getting crazy in this world. Now there's war happening in the place that these people in the Ukraine, they didn't think this was going to happen, and it doesn't look too good. Hope for peace. Hope is a very, very powerful thing to have. And when you live in this way, it's just natural to have hope. And you use your visualization to visualize a healthy future and then come back to the present moment. When you do that, you're bringing something from the future to help right now. But it also requires for you to be at peace with your past. This helps you to stay in the present moment. This means your life right now is very important. This is one of the many reasons why you are a blessing. Think about this story and make your choices. The smallest things have the greatest impact. Be mindful of the plants, the plant people. Be mindful of all animals, because it doesn't matter what size they are. Look at how powerful they can be. Look at this coronavirus. You cannot see it, but look at what it's doing to the world. It would be good if we strived for peace. But peace begins within each and every one of us. As I said, reality begins within. And I explained how you can develop peace within yourself. Each one of us can do this. And then nature will reflect that to everywhere around us. You can play a huge role in influencing peace. Worldwide. Universe-wide. Hohechetuelo mitakuyepi. That's the truth, everyone. I'll leave this with you to think about, and I will talk to you in the next video. Doksha Ake. Until next time. To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichochan Otechike. This book also includes Lakota star knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota star knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost as well as a tracking number. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost as well as a tracking number. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is hehaka7@yahoo.com. That's HEHAKA, the number 7@yahoo.com. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. Lila Pilamayelo. Thank you very much.
Everything you could ever dream of. violate